The Green Bay Packers have a kicker problem, and it will impact the way that they play offense when they're in their opponent's side of the field, or at least it should.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. The Packers have a kicker problem. And I don't want to hear about Mason Crosby's career average and what Anders Carlson kicked last year. I don't care. And one of the reasons why I don't care is, yes, Mason Crosby, especially early in his career, was inconsistent. Mason Crosby, in the middle and later parts of his career, was inconsistent. He was also clutch. Some of the biggest kicks of the last 15 years for the Green Bay Packers were made by Mason Crosby. And the only reason he continued to be the kicker of the Packers, despite the inconsistencies, is because he made some big kicks. He also missed some big kicks. And if that's what Anders Carlson develops into, okay, that's fine. We have no evidence to suggest that's the case. No evidence to suggest that's the case right now. The Packers do not have another kicker in camp who they can trust. And I still am of the mind that right now, the Packers' week one kicker is not on their roster. But that's not important to me right now. What is important is even if the Packers go out and get, let's say, a Cade York or someone of that ilk, they are not going to trust them the same sort of way that you would want to trust a kicker. And that has to affect the way that you call plays in the plus part of the field. If it's 3rd and 8 from the 40, make sure that built into that play and built into your DNA as a team is understanding there has to be an outlet and an option that if whatever you're calling is not there and it's not clean, go get 5 yards, 6 yards, and give yourself a chance to go for it on 4th down. Not to kick a field goal, to go for it. I don't care about 5 yards closer to kick a field goal. I care about turning 3rd and 8 into 4th and reasonable, because 4th and anything less than 4 on the plus side of the field is go territory for this offense. We're going to talk about this offense a little bit more later in the show. But that is the way. And we talked about this last year going into the season when we knew Anders Carlson, a rookie, was going to be inconsistent. Now, he turned out to be the most inaccurate rookie kicker basically of the last 20 years, because almost every kicker who has missed as many kicks as he did was cut or benched, and certainly a kicker on a good team. But I said it must mean for the Packers that they need to be aggressive in these kick-go situations. And for the most part last year, the Packers were pretty good in kick-go situations. Should they go for it? Should they kick it? What do the numbers say? And I don't believe solely in cold analytics on 4th down. I believe in understanding what your team is, in the flow of the game, how they've done against this opponent, how you like your matchups, the weather, all of that stuff, how your defense is playing, all of that stuff matters. What I want to see from the Packers is an understanding on 3rd down. On 3rd down to play for 4th. It has to be ingrained. When the Lions and the Ravens get into plus territory, they are calling plays on third down with the baseline assumption that they're going to go for it on fourth down. As long as they don't lose yards. Like if it's 3rd and 10, okay, I understand. But if it's 3rd and 10 and you call a play to get 5 or 6 yards, that's fine. But don't then kick the field goal. Go for it. This is an offense that is good enough, a group of skill talent that is good enough, a quarterback that is good enough, a coach and play designer that is good enough that those situations you should be able to get 3 or 4 yards. And in fact, in a lot of ways, I have more confidence in their ability to get 3 to 6 yards on a given play than I do to get 1 on 4th and 1, because on 4th and 1, they're going to line up and either sneak it or run some sort of silly inside run. It is one of the few places where I think Matt LaFleur can get better as a play caller and as a decision maker. It's a lot of like A.J. Dillon up the middle, and I don't know why that would be the way you'd want to handle it. He's just never proven to be that guy. The Packers offensive line is not built that way. And so I don't, that's never made sense to me. But you have to call your third down play with the presupposition that you're going to have a chance on fourth down. And then that doesn't mean be conservative. That doesn't mean on 3rd and 8, throw it short of the sticks. Last year, Jordan Love was one of the more aggressive quarterbacks in the league, trying to throw at or beyond the sticks on 3rd down. And I think that is something that can and should continue when you have the quarterback that they have, the play caller that they have, the skill talent that they have, the offensive line that they have. They are able, if it's 3rd and 8, to call a play to get 8. But understand, if you're Jordan Love, if you're Matt LaFleur, that if it's not clean, if you have to force it, that you can give yourself a chance to go get it on 4th down. And that has to be part of the game plans. It has to be part of your DNA. It has to be part of the way that you know you're going to handle these situations, so you don't feel like you have to force it into coverage on 3rd and 8, that you could check it down, get 4 yards, give yourself a shot on 4th and 4. And I would extend this outside of field goal range. I'm talking about 40-yard line and out. The better the defense is playing, the more aggressive you can be. Sometimes this gets twisted where you hear announcers say, well, with the way their defense is playing, I would just punt the ball away and hope your defense gets a stop. No, if anything, it should be the opposite. That if your defense is playing well, be more aggressive going forward on 4th down, because if you give the ball up at your own 45, you trust your defense to not give up a touchdown. Field goal at worst. And this offense is capable of going point for point with anybody in the football game. In any football game that they play, they are capable of going point for point with anyone. So be aggressive, but be mindful. Understand a 4-yard gain on 3rd and long might be okay in certain situations, but it has to be something where everyone is on the same page. The quarterback, the coach, the receivers, the offensive line, the running back understand. Like the Packers last year had issues getting out of bounds when it was advantageous to do so. They had issues on RPOs having no receivers running routes. Like these are basic things. And so if this seems like a basic idea, try and get 4 yards on 3rd and 8 from opponent territory, you're right. But it was something that the Packers could not consistently handle last year. Think of how good the offense could be if they can just get some of these brain dead mistakes out of what they're doing. They don't have to get significantly better, but they might. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment you can cancel any time. We just heard that they're going to give us even more functionality, even more customizable options with your multi-view, which means you get to pick the games in your multi-view. Last year, it was just like, here's a bunch of options. Now you can actually pick them, which is a really cool feature of the Sunday Ticket platform with YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I was going through offensive stats from last year and looking at the best of the best. I wanted to put together an indexed list of the best offenses in the league. And I looked at a slew of metrics: DVOA, EPA per play, success rate, all these metrics. And what stood out to me is how high the Packers were in all of them. 6th in DVOA, 5th in EPA per play, 8th in success rate. That one surprised me. 7th in average net yards per attempt, 7th in points per play, 2nd in pass block win rate, 6th in passing grade. And I said, they're better than you remember. And part of the reason why they're not better than as good as they're not as you don't remember. Let me try and speak English. Part of the, this is so confusing. I'm confused. Part of the reason you don't remember them being as good is because of how it looked at the start of the season. You go, okay, well, that second half, that's lifting, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting. And that is true. But as we talked about with Aaron Schatz, that second half of the season, and it's not a small sample. I've talked about this ad nauseum. It is such a productive sample. They were so good that in the aggregate for the season, they were an elite offense. And that means you don't even have to get better to be where you need to be. If the Packers are a top 5, top 6 offense by DVOA again this year, they're going to win 10 games because the defense is going to be better. And I'm talking about at least 10 games. That is building in no growth. Just a little bit more, a smoothing of the consistency. The Packers for the last 8 games were awesome. For the first 8 games, much more hit or miss. And that makes sense for a young team. The youngest group of pass catchers we've ever seen. Guys not knowing where to be. Matt LaFleur not knowing what the best play calls were. Aaron Jones in and out of the lineup. Christian Watson in and out of the lineup. David Bakhtiari immediately out of the lineup. And trying to find things that work. They finally did, and they finally did in part because they had a running game at the end of the season. They don't need to be materially better in the aggregate to get to where they want to go this year. They can be the 5th or 6th best offense and still be a really, really good football team. Do you think that's likely? Do you think that's likely that none of Jordan Love, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, none of those guys are going to get better? None. And none of those guys will get better. Let's even say net neutral. Like, could 1 or 2 of them get worse? But are they going to get worse as a group? Is everyone going to have a sophomore slump? Or will you have 1 or 2 guys that take a step forward to balance out that sophomore slump? Even if that's the case, if no one gets better, they're really good. Like the reason we've talked about this so much is I think it has been lost how good they are, and people have dismissed it, and they've said, well, you're really just looking at that second half of the season. Yes, when they were incredible. But okay, let me try and steelman this. Let's look at the other top offenses and see who has the case to be year over year better. The Bills. They have an identity. They were really good last year. But Josh Allen is more or less maxed out at what he can be as a quarterback, which is like the second best quarterback in the league. But that's what he was last year. I thought he was the MVP. Should have been the league MVP. They lose Stephon Diggs. They lose Gabriel Davis. Are they going to be better? Are they going to be better? They were a top 5 offense in basically every category last year. Are they going to be better? Seems unlikely. The 49ers, I looked this up. The teams that were as good as they were tend to take enormous steps back in their subsequent seasons. Even the all-time great quarterback seasons. You look at Brock Purdy, and in basically none of the cases, with the exception of Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, did they get better the year after they were historically good? It's just very unlikely to happen. And in fact, in most cases, those quarterbacks, I'm talking about Drew Brees and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, some of the best quarterbacks to ever play, took significant steps forward. Even if they led the league in EPA per play again the next year, it was significantly down from the year before. This 49ers offense is going to take a step back. Even if they're the best offense in the league again, they're going to take a step back. There is not a strong case for them to improve. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson was the MVP. I know they have Derrick Henry. Okay. Are they going to be better? The offensive line is still a pretty big question. It seems unlikely to me they're going to be materially better. What is the case? Zay Flowers, how much better can he get? That's a question. Rashad Bateman, how much better can he get? I think there's a reasonable case here with those young players. But I don't think there's a reasonable case for Lamar Jackson. We've done this with the Lions. Jared Goff is not going to take a step forward in a meaningful way. Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably not going to take a step forward in a meaningful way. Sam Laporta is probably not going to take a step forward in a meaningful way. He was really, really, really good last year. He was an all-pro last year. So what? He's going to be prime Gronk this year? Chances are that's not the case. Just like historically speaking, that's likely not the case. Are the Dolphins going to get better? They've been like a top three offense each of the last 2 years. Are they going to get materially better? What about the Eagles? Offensive line is worse. You got a new play caller, new backfield. I understand Saquon Barkley. Are they going to get much better? Are the Rams going to get much better? When we know what the ceiling is with Matthew Stafford, when Puka Nacua has a historically good year last year. They already have injuries along the offensive line. And I'm fading the improvement of the Texans because when you look at what they were last year, I think people remember the playoff game against the Browns and they go, well, this offense was awesome. No, they weren't. They weren't. They were average in all of the major efficiency numbers. They were average because structurally, they were not an efficient offense. They had a lot of early down running and they weren't very good at it. I need to see them fix that part of it. I need to see what an early down drop back game looks like on a consistent basis for the Texans. I want to see Tank Dell stay healthy. I want to see Stephon Diggs be a positive influence on this team. That's a lot of question marks. And that was from a team that was 14th, 15th in DVOA and EPA per play last year. They were a middling offense last year for as good as CJ Stroud was. And this is the point that Aaron Schatz made on our show. For both Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, it is unlikely that they will take significant steps forward when they were top 10 quarterbacks last year. Most likely, they will just be top 10 quarterbacks again. They could get incrementally better. But if they do, if CJ Stroud only gets incrementally better, then the best case scenario is they're as good as the Packers were already last year. Whereas if Jordan Love gets incrementally better, the Packers go from the sixth best offense, the fifth best offense in the league, to the second best offense in the league, the first best offense in the league. That's the difference. So the Ravens, I think, have a case. The Cowboys, no thank you. And then the Chiefs. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. So, okay. I mean, I can see that one. They get Xavier Worthy. They bring in, Hollywood Brown, already hurt, unfortunately. Sternoclavicular injury. That sounds like it hurts. So who are these other offenses that are going to jump up and pass the Packers this year? This is as much of a case of why I made the argument the Packers can be the best offense in the league this year is because it is a pretty straightforward path about how they can get better. And I just don't see that argument for the other teams in their class. And offense is pretty static. It's pretty sticky. So I could see, a team like the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, if he stays healthy, they can jump up in the mix. The Falcons adding Kirk Cousins and with the additions that they've made on defense, can they be on a little bit more advantageous game script and can they just hit the ground running offensively with Bijan and Drake London and all those guys, Kyle Pitts? Okay, maybe. But are they going to pass the Packers? Would you predict that? I wouldn't. That's why I'm so bullish on this offense this year. Now, speaking of this offense and Jordan Love, I know that there was some pushback on it's a preseason game. But there was a preseason game for the Packers where we saw everything we needed to see and everything we were going to see from Jordan Love. And it told us something. We just didn't know it at the time. We're going to talk about it next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is an official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So, for example, Game Time has 50% off Labor Day tickets for Diamondback Dodgers. You can go to Game Time and they'll show you that right away. Hey, you're getting an awesome deal. Why wouldn't you want to do that? There's an app with the feature on the app, customize your spot. So you can have exactly where you want to be. You know where you're getting these deals. And curated deals make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Download the Game Time app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. The lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. Now go listen to Locked On Fantasy Football. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. You can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I was struck by how much I heard from people in the aftermath of this Broncos game that preseason games don't matter. And I thought of 2021, a game that I had gone back and watched ahead of the 2023 season because I wanted to see Jordan Love get some real game reps. Among the first real game reps we saw from Jordan Love, albeit a preseason game. And it was the third preseason game. And the Bills played their starters. Josh Allen attempted 26 passes in this game. Jordan Love went 12 for 18 for 149, did throw a just brutal interception. A little bit reminiscent of what we saw, honestly, in the NFC divisional round. But we saw flashes of Jordan Love. And this is the third stringers against the ones. They move the ball on the first drive. They get down inside the 1 yard line. And they try and throw. It's Reggie Bagleton against Trey White, a slant. It's a great throw, and it's just Reggie Bagleton against Trey White. On the next drive, they move the ball into Buffalo territory. And Jordan Love throws a YOLO interception in the end zone. But they move the ball against the first string Buffalo Bills defense. This is an AFC contender. On the next drive, they move the ball. They get into a end goal situation. And they end up having to kick a field goal because they could not get into the end zone playing against Bills starters with Reggie Bagleton and Malik Taylor and Dominique Daphne as their offense. There was a throw in that game. A hole shot. Jordan Love got the Bills to jump off sides. He gets back, pressure in his face, and rips an absolute seed to the sideline where only Malik Taylor can make the play. He makes the play. It's a chunk gain, and you just went, oh, that's in his bag. That's what he's capable of. And while he did have the bad interception, you saw him compete. What you also saw, interestingly, and we didn't quite understand this at the time, but you go back and watch, it's a lot of under center play action. It's a lot of boots. It's a lot of deep overs. It's a lot of the offense that we saw the Packers run last year. but not, interestingly, the offense that they ran in 2021. This was Matt LaFleur test driving his offense with Jordan Love and with third stringers, backup offensive linemen against an AFC contender. The Packers offense with Jordan Love moved the ball up and down the field. On every possession that they had, they moved it into the red zone. On every possession. Now, they didn't score. Missed field goal, penalties, and then a missed 4th and goal situation. But they moved the ball at will. That mattered. Seeing that mattered, and Matt LaFleur getting an opportunity to call his offense without revealing anything for the regular season, because they were not going to run that version of the offense with Aaron Rodgers. That mattered too. These games do matter, and what you want to see, even if you're playing against ones, is you want to see your backups pop. Malik Taylor made some plays. Reggie Bagleton made some plays. Dominique Daphne made some plays. They needed Malik Taylor in that season because of injuries. They needed Dominique Daphne because of injuries. And those guys showed that they were capable backup players. Malik Taylor went to New York with Aaron Rodgers. So that would have been nice to see, of course, in the Denver game. That's that's how we're connecting this here. You want to see those flashes. Keaton Oladapo, Matt LaFleur buzzing about Keaton Oladapo. Big smile on his face when asked about what he saw in that first action. Tyron Hopper. We saw it pop. And he popped the shoulder pads. That is important stuff. It doesn't, the outcome of the game doesn't matter, but the games do matter because we get glimpses. We view of the future in these games, and you want it to be a bright future. That is part of the purpose here. So the fact that Edgerrin Cooper is back practicing and could potentially play this week, that's great. Matt LaFleur said, we want to see these rookies. So Keaton Oladapo, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, Jordan Morgan, I think we're going to see all of them if they are healthy enough to go. It's great. We talked yesterday about Edgerrin Cooper and could he be one of these new IR guys? The fact that he was back and practicing, actually working in team and walkthroughs, that's encouraging. You got to get back. You got to get on the field. You got to get these reps. We want to see it pop in the preseason. If he gets out there, even on a couple series, we want to see the talent pop. It popped for Tyron Hopper. It popped early for Evan Williams and Javon Bullard. It made us excited about what they can be when we see them using these 3 safety alignments. They're not doing that just for fun. It's the only thing they showed against Denver. They played a lot of soft and off. They played a lot of 2 deep safeties, which is interesting because I don't expect them to do a ton of that in the regular season. But certainly not post-snap to have 2 safeties back. But we did see something. We didn't see nothing. There is value in that. There's value in seeing Javon Bullard line up in the slot in 3 safety base formations. And seeing Anthony Johnson Jr. do that and prove to us, show us, this is something that is actually part of the game plan. It's not just a lark. And that's cool. That's important. It matters. Even if the wins and losses don't matter, they don't count, but it matters. All right, back tomorrow. Much more here on Locked On Packers as we close out the preseason. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, and subscribe it over on our social medias, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, so you can stay Locked On Packers.